I still have the rules. They're folded inside a plastic evidence bag sitting in my desk drawer. The paper is yellow now. The edges are brittle. The ink has started fading. But I keep it because nobody believes me when I tell them what happened. Not my wife. Not the state police. Not the people from the forestry service. And definitely not the men who came and shut down Tower 7 after everything was over. When I show them the list, they usually laugh. At first, then they stop laughing around rule number 6. And by the time they reach rule number 7, they always hand the paper back without saying anything. I worked at a fire tower in southeastern Ohio for one summer. 3 months. 92 days. That's all. But it was enough. Enough to make me quit a job I'd wanted since I was a kid. Enough to leave the state. Enough to make me wake up at exactly 2:13 every morning for the next 4 years. Most people don't even know Ohio still has active fire towers. They imagine places like Montana or California. Huge forests, massive wildfires. Not Ohio. But down in the Wayne National Forest, there are still remote towers used for observation, communications, and emergency coordination. Most aren't staffed anymore. Mine was. Tower 7, a 60-foot steel structure sitting in the middle of nowhere. No nearby roads. No towns, just miles of woods. The nearest ranger station was almost 40 minutes away. Cell service barely existed. The job sounded perfect, quiet, simple. Watch the forest, report smoke, maintain equipment. Easy money. When I arrived for orientation, there were only 3 other new hires. We spent most of the morning filling out paperwork, liability forms, emergency procedures, equipment training, normal stuff. Then an older ranger named Wilson walked into the room carrying 4 manila envelopes. He handed one to each of us. Don't lose these. I looked inside. A single sheet of paper. 7 rules. No explanation. No title. Just 7 rules. I remember laughing. I thought it was a joke. Some weird initiation thing. Wilson didn't laugh. Neither did the other rangers. He simply said, if you're assigned a tower, follow every rule exactly. One of the new hires raised his hand. What happens if we don't? Wilson stared at him for several seconds, then replied, depends which rule. Nobody asked another question. 3 days later, I was assigned Tower 7. And that's when I learned the rules weren't a joke. Rule 1. If you hear someone climbing the stairs after sunset, do not leave the observation room until sunrise. At first that seemed ridiculous. The tower was in a public forest. People wandered around all the time. Hikers, hunters, campers. If someone climbed the stairs, why would that matter? I learned the answer on my second night. The sun had just gone down. I was logging weather data. Nothing unusual. Then I heard footsteps. Metal footsteps. Slow. Heavy. Coming from below. The stairs wrapped around the outside of the tower. Every step echoed. Clang. 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 Whoever was climbing wasn't trying to be quiet. I looked out the window. Couldn't see anyone. The tower light illuminated the first 20 feet of stairs. Nothing above that. The footsteps continued, getting closer. 30 feet, 40, 50. Then they stopped, directly outside the observation room. The door had a small glass window. I turned toward it and saw nothing. No person, no movement. Yet something had climbed 60 feet of stairs. I grabbed my flashlight, started toward the door, then remembered rule 1. For some reason that stopped me. Maybe instinct, maybe fear. I sat back down. The footsteps resumed. Except now, they were moving away, descending, slowly, one step at a time, until they disappeared. The next morning, I checked the stairs. No footprints. No signs anyone had been there. Nothing. I told myself it was an animal. Maybe wind. Maybe my imagination. Then I found the handprint, halfway down the tower, pressed into rust. A human handprint, with 6 fingers. And that's when I stopped laughing at the rules. The second strange thing happened a week later. Rule 2. If the radio says your name between midnight and 4 a.m., do not answer. The radio was old, state issued, mostly used for weather updates and ranger communications. Around 1:30 one morning, I was drinking coffee and filling out reports when the radio crackled. Static, normal, then a voice, clear as day. David. My name. I looked up immediately. The voice sounded familiar, like another ranger. Then it repeated, "David." Static. Silence. I reached for the microphone, then stopped. Rule 2. I waited. The radio remained quiet for several minutes. Then the voice returned. Only this time it sounded different. Closer. More personal. "David, answer me." My skin crawled. The voice sounded exactly like my father. My father had died 6 years earlier. I nearly dropped the radio. Then came a third transmission. Not my father's voice anymore. My own. Perfectly. "David, answer." The radio went dead. No further transmissions. The next morning I reported it. Wilson's expression immediately changed. "Did you answer?" "No." He nodded, then visibly relaxed. I asked what would have happened if I had. His response still bothers me. He said, "Then we'd have had to find out which David answered," and refused to elaborate. By then I was starting to realize something wasn't normal about Tower 7. The other towers didn't have lists. Not like ours. I'd asked around. Tower 2 had one rule. Tower 4 had none. Tower 7 had 7. And nobody wanted to discuss why. Especially Rule 6. Everybody avoided Rule 6. Even mentioning it seemed to make people uncomfortable. I didn't understand why. Not yet. The third rule was the one that really changed things. Rule 3. If you see another fire tower in the forest, do not look at it for longer than 5 seconds. That sounded impossible. There wasn't another tower. I had maps, satellite imagery, inspection records. Tower 7 was alone. Then one afternoon I saw it, about 3 miles west, standing above the trees. Another fire tower. At first I assumed I'd missed something. Maybe an abandoned structure. Maybe an old observation platform. But something felt wrong. The proportions looked off. Too tall, too narrow, almost stretched. I grabbed binoculars, then remembered the rule. 5 seconds. I counted. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then looked away. The urge to look again was immediate, intense, like an itch behind my eyes. I fought it for almost an hour. Eventually, curiosity won. I looked back. The tower was closer. Not dramatically, but definitely closer. Maybe half a mile. I froze. That shouldn't have been possible. I checked the distance markers. The tree line. The ridges. Everything. The tower had moved. I looked away instantly. My heart pounding. When I checked again at sunset, it was gone. Completely gone. That night, I found something scratched into the underside of my desk. Old writing. Probably decades old. A previous keeper. It said, "The other tower only moves when you watch it." I didn't sleep much after that. And things only got worse. Because on day 21, I broke Rule 4. And that's when the forest started noticing me. Rule 4 seemed harmless compared to the others. Honestly, it was the only rule I wasn't afraid of. At least initially. It read, "If you hear whistling from the tree line, close all curtains immediately. Do not look outside for 15 minutes. That was it. No explanation. No warning. Just 15 minutes. Simple. The problem was that by day 21, I had started getting comfortable. Comfortable enough to think the rules were exaggerated. Comfortable enough to believe there was a logical explanation behind everything. A 6-fingered handprint? Probably a prank. Voices on the radio? Interference. The moving tower? Fatigue. Sleep deprivation. I wanted normal explanations. Human explanations. So when I heard the whistling, I didn't take it seriously. It was around 5:40 in the evening. Still daylight. I was making coffee. The sound drifted through the open window. Soft. Slow. Almost cheerful. Someone whistling a tune. I remember thinking it sounded familiar. Like a song my grandfather used to hum. The sound came from the forest directly north of the tower. I walked to the window, looked out, and immediately noticed something strange. The whistling wasn't moving. Whoever was making it stood perfectly still, about 100 yards from the tower, half hidden among the trees. I could barely make out a silhouette. Human-shaped, tall, motionless, just standing there, whistling. The figure didn't sway, didn't shift its weight, didn't blink. It simply stood there. I should have closed the curtains. Instead, I grabbed my binoculars. That decision nearly got me killed. The moment I focused the lenses, I realized it wasn't a person. At least, not entirely. Its proportions were wrong. The arms hung too low. The legs were too long. Its head tilted slightly to one side, like a curious animal. And its face looked unfinished, like someone had tried to build a human from memory. Eyes slightly too far apart, mouth too wide, skin stretched unnaturally tight. Then the whistling stopped. The silence hit me instantly. The thing was staring directly at me. It shouldn't have been able to see me through the glare on the tower windows. Yet somehow it could. Then it smiled. I slammed the curtains shut. My hands were shaking, heart hammering. I checked my watch. 15 minutes. Just 15 minutes. Easy. Except 5 minutes later, I heard footsteps. Metal footsteps. Outside, climbing the tower. Fast. Much faster than before. Clang. 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 The entire structure vibrated. Whatever was climbing wasn't moving like a human. It was practically sprinting. I backed away from the door. The footsteps reached the top. Stopped. Then something hit the glass. Once. Twice. 3 times. Like someone tapping politely. I refused to look. The tapping continued. For almost 10 minutes. Then came a voice. Soft. Friendly. David. I closed my eyes immediately. Because I recognized the voice. It was mine. David. Tap. 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 Open the door. The voice sounded calm. Patient. Almost amused. The tapping continued. Then came something much worse. A second voice. My mother's. Sweetheart. Tap. 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 Let me in. I felt tears welling up immediately. My mother was alive. 3 states away. Yet the voice sounded perfect. Every inflection. Every mannerism. Exactly right. Then my father's voice joined her. Then my brothers. Then friends. Then co-workers. One after another. Dozens of voices. All asking to be let inside. All coming from the other side of the door. And through it all, I kept hearing that same gentle whistling. The 15 minutes finally ended. The voices stopped instantly. The footsteps disappeared. The tower fell silent. I opened the curtains. Nothing stood outside. The forest looked normal again. But something had changed. I could feel it. The woods no longer felt empty. They felt aware. Like thousands of eyes had suddenly turned toward me. Watching. Waiting. Evaluating. The next morning I called Wilson. I admitted I had broken Rule 4. The line remained silent for several seconds. Then he asked a question. Only one. Did it smile? My stomach dropped. Yeah. Another long pause. Then he sighed. The kind of sigh people make when bad news becomes inevitable. You need to follow the rest of the rules exactly now. What does that mean? No answer. Wilson. His voice became quieter. Almost nervous. It knows what you look like. The call ended. For the next week, nothing happened. No whistles. No strange voices. No second tower. Everything seemed normal. And somehow that was worse. Because I knew something was coming. The rules weren't random. They were connected. Every one of them seemed designed to avoid attention. Avoid recognition. Avoid being noticed. Whatever lived in those woods wasn't hunting people. It was identifying them, learning them, copying them. Then came Rule 5. And that's when I realized the previous keepers hadn't vanished by accident. Because Rule 5 wasn't meant to protect me from something in the forest. It was meant to protect everyone else from something inside the tower. Rule 5 was the shortest rule on the list. Only one sentence. If you see yourself standing on the stairs below the tower, do not acknowledge it. Do not wave. Do not speak. Do not leave the observation room until sunrise. The first time I read it, I thought it was ridiculous. After everything else I'd experienced, it became the rule I feared most. Because unlike the others, it wasn't warning me about something distant. It was warning me about me, or something pretending to be me. The incident happened on day 34, a little after midnight. The forest was unusually quiet. No insects, no wind, no owl calls, nothing, just silence. I was writing weather reports when movement caught my eye. Something on the stairs. At first I assumed it was another hiker. Then I noticed the clothes. Same Forest Service jacket. Same boots. Same flashlight clipped to the belt. My flashlight. My jacket. My boots. I slowly approached the window and saw myself standing 3 levels below the observation room. Perfectly still. Looking up, the moonlight illuminated the face. My face. Every detail identical. Even the small scar beneath my chin. For several seconds, I couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. The thing smiled. Not a normal smile. Too wide. Too deliberate. Like someone imitating happiness. Then it raised a hand and waved. My entire body locked up. The rule echoed in my head. Do not acknowledge it. Do not wave. Do not speak. The thing continued waving. Patiently. Almost politely. Then it spoke. I couldn't hear the words through the glass, but I could see its lips moving. My lips. It was saying something. Again and again. Eventually, curiosity got the better of me. I grabbed binoculars, focused on its mouth. The words became clear. 3 words, over and over. Let me in. The thing stood there for almost an hour, never blinking, never looking away, just smiling, waving, repeating the same sentence. At exactly 1:13 a.m., it stopped. Its expression changed. The smile vanished. For the first time, it looked angry. Then it started climbing, slowly, one step at a time, toward the observation room. I backed away immediately, heart racing. The footsteps echoed through the tower. Clang, 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 closer, 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 until they stopped directly outside the door. Silence, then a single knock. 3 soft taps. Tap, tap, tap. My voice came through the other side. Perfect. David. I didn't answer. Another knock. David. Still silent. Then something happened that I still struggle to explain. The voice changed. Not gradually. Instantly. It became Wilson. Then my father. Then my mother. Then dozens of others. The same thing I'd heard after breaking Rule 4. Only this time, there was something else beneath the voices. Something layered underneath them. A sound that didn't belong. Like hundreds of people speaking simultaneously. Thousands maybe. All trying to use the same mouth. The door handle slowly turned. Once. Twice. Then stopped. The voices fell silent. A few seconds later, I heard footsteps descending the stairs. The thing was leaving. Or so I thought. I waited until sunrise. Opened the door. Nobody there. No footprints. No evidence. Nothing. Then I looked over the railing. Halfway down the tower, scratched into the metal with something sharp, were 6 words. It's easier if you agree. I didn't report that one. I didn't report anything anymore. Because I had started noticing something disturbing. The Rangers already knew. Not just Wilson. All of them. Every single one. Whenever I mentioned a rule, they reacted too quickly. Like people discussing something familiar. Something rehearsed. Nobody ever seemed surprised. Nobody asked questions. Nobody wanted details. It was as if they already knew exactly what had happened. And that realization led me to Rule 6. The rule everybody avoided. The rule nobody discussed. The rule that made experienced Rangers visibly uncomfortable. I remember reading it dozens of times, trying to understand why it was different, why everyone feared it. Eventually I got my answer. Because Rule 6 wasn't really a rule. It was a warning. And once it happened, there was no way to undo it. Rule 6 read, if the forest goes silent during daylight hours, immediately descend the tower and leave. Do not look into the trees. That was it. No further instructions. No explanation. Just leave. The event occurred on day 47. Around noon. Bright sunlight. Clear skies. Completely normal day. Then every sound vanished. Instantly. 1 second birds were singing. The next second, absolute silence. No gradual change. No transition. Everything simply stopped. The silence felt wrong. Heavy. Pressurized. Like being underwater. The moment it happened, I remembered Rule 6. Leave immediately. No hesitation. I grabbed my keys. Started down the stairs. Halfway down, I noticed something. Every tree in the forest was leaning. Not physically. Visually. Like they were all angled toward the tower. Toward me. Watching. I kept moving. Faster now. Almost running. The silence continued. No wind. No movement. Nothing. Then I heard a whisper. Directly behind me. Don't look. The voice sounded exactly like Wilson. I froze. Because Wilson wasn't there. He couldn't be. The ranger station was 40 minutes away. The whisper came again. Closer. Keep walking. Against every instinct I obeyed. And that's when I saw movement in my peripheral vision. Something between the trees. Dozens of somethings. Tall. Thin. Standing perfectly still. Watching. I couldn't make out details. Only shapes. human-shaped, hundreds of them, maybe more. The urge to look directly at them became overwhelming, almost physical, like someone grabbing my head and trying to force it sideways. Every nerve in my body screamed at me to turn around, to look, to understand. I somehow resisted, reached my truck, started the engine, drove. Only when I was several miles away did the forest sounds return. Birds, wind, life, everything normal again. I thought I'd survived Rule 6. I was wrong, because that night I discovered something terrifying. Rule 6 wasn't about avoiding what was in the forest. It was about preventing them from seeing you. And unfortunately, they had. I didn't realize they had seen me until the following morning. At first, everything seemed normal. I arrived at the tower just before sunrise, unlocked the door, climbed the stairs, started my shift. Nothing unusual. Then I opened the logbook. Every tower keeper maintained one. Weather reports, equipment checks, wildlife sightings, routine entries. I flipped to the previous day's page. My handwriting filled the sheet, except for one entry, an entry I hadn't written. It appeared beneath my final note from the night before. Same pen, same handwriting, same signature, yet I knew I'd never written it. The entry contained only one sentence. They can see you now. I stared at it for a long time, tried to rationalize it, trying to convince myself I had simply forgotten. But deep down I knew the truth. Something had entered the tower after I left. Something capable of copying me perfectly. My handwriting, my voice, my face, everything. I immediately called Wilson. For the first time since I'd started working there, he sounded genuinely frightened. What exactly did it say? I read the sentence. Silence. Several seconds of silence. Then he asked, "Did you look into the trees yesterday?" "No." "Not directly?" "No." Another pause. Then he whispered, "That means they looked at you first." I remember gripping the phone tighter. What does that mean? His answer still haunts me. "It means you're visible now." Then he hung up. No explanation. No warning. Nothing. Just those words. "You're visible now." The next few days were awful. Not because anything happened, because things started disappearing. Small things. My flashlight. My thermos. A notebook. Objects would vanish, then reappear somewhere impossible. Inside locked cabinets. Under sealed floor panels. Places they couldn't have reached. The strangest disappearance involved my tower key. I lost it sometime around noon. Spent 2 hours searching. Eventually found it sitting on the observation desk. Balanced upright. Standing vertically. That should have been impossible. Keys don't stand up by themselves. Yet there it was. Waiting. Almost deliberately. Then I noticed the scratches around it. Tiny marks etched into the wood. Hundreds of them. Forming letters. One sentence. The same sentence. Over and over. "We see you. We see you. We see you." Every available inch of what contained those words. I don't remember leaving the tower that day. I honestly think I blacked out. The next thing I remember is waking up in my truck, parked outside the ranger station. Wilson standing beside the vehicle, looking exhausted. He opened the passenger door, handed me a bottle of water, and said, "It's starting." That was the first time anyone admitted there was a process, a progression, something predictable. I demanded answers. For once, Wilson actually gave them. Not all of them, just enough. According to him, Tower 7 wasn't originally built as a fire observation post. It existed long before that. The structure had been rebuilt multiple times, moved, expanded, renovated, but something had always occupied that hill. Long before the Forestry Service, long before the state, long before roads. Native accounts mentioned a place where the forest learned faces. Settlers described people returning from the hill changed. Not possessed, not insane, different, as if something had studied them and produced an imperfect copy. Every generation had a different explanation. Spirits, demons, aliens, government experiments. The explanation didn't matter. The pattern remained identical. People saw something, then something saw them back. And after that, the copying began. I asked the question that had been bothering me for weeks. What happened to the previous tower keepers? Wilson looked away, didn't answer immediately. Finally, he said, "Most of them left." Most. Another silence. Then, some stayed. That answer made my blood run cold. Because I suddenly remembered something. The list. The 7 rules. Nowhere did it say previous keepers disappeared. That assumption had come from me. Not the rules. Not the forestry service. Me. What do you mean they stayed? Wilson rubbed his eyes, then said, some of them never wanted to leave. I didn't understand what he meant. Not then. I understood 3 nights later. Because that's when Rule 7 happened. The final rule. The rule everyone avoided discussing. The rule nobody ever explained. The last line on the paper. The one that made experienced rangers visibly uncomfortable. Rule 7. If you ever see someone standing inside the tower before you arrive, do not go up the stairs. That was all. No alternative instructions. No emergency procedures. Just don't go up. Simple. Except when it happened. Everything changed. I arrived just after dawn. Parked my truck. Stepped out. And immediately froze. Someone was standing inside the observation room, looking down at me through the glass. The figure didn't move. Didn't wave. Didn't react. Just watched. From 60 feet above. At first I assumed another ranger had arrived early. Then I noticed the clothes. Forest Service jacket. Work boots. Flashlight clipped to the belt. My flashlight. My jacket. My boots. The figure was me. Standing inside the tower. Watching me approach. And smiling. The exact same smile I'd seen on the stairs. The exact same smile from Rule 5. Only this time, there was nowhere for it to hide. Nowhere for me to pretend. The thing wasn't pretending anymore. It was occupying my tower. My workspace. My life. I remembered the rule immediately. Do not go up. For several seconds, neither of us moved. Then the thing raised its hand. Slowly. And pointed toward the forest. I turned instinctively. The moment I did, every tree line around the hill erupted with movement. Hundreds of figures, maybe thousands, standing between the trees, watching. Every single one looked human from a distance. Every single one stood perfectly still. And every single one had my face. Not similar, not close, identical. The realization shattered something inside me. Because Wilson had been wrong. They weren't copying me. They had already copied me. Over and over and over. I was simply the newest version, the newest attempt, the newest observer. And the thing inside the tower wasn't pretending to be me. It believed I was pretending to be it. The figure above smiled wider, then mouthed 4 words through the glass. Words I understood immediately, because I had already heard them before. It's your turn now. And for the first time since arriving at Tower 7, the tower door opened by itself.